All right, we hit go
Are
live.
you recording this? Question mark.
No, I don't usually record it because it's recorded live on Facebook. I never record. Well, I've learned now. I'm gonna click record moving forward. I quit. We're gonna do it anyways. All right. It says we're live on Facebook. Let's check the Chasing the Awesome Life page. Tell me if you see it there, because that's where it should be live. And if it's not,
okie dokie. Chasing the Awesome Life. No.
Give this a shot. Okay, fun. Cool. It literally says it's live on Facebook on my.
Oh, I see us now.
Hey, yo.
You have one viewer. Cool. It might be me.
Share it, man. Share it wherever you need to. Oh, Lord, I'm going to share it as well. Welcome, anyone who is tuning in. This is now take 4 or 5. I don't know what it is anymore. For today's live session, it's 12:37. We were supposed to start at 12. We actually did start at 12. Alex and I recorded 25 minutes worth of this week's interview on resilience and leadership in 2020. And then 2020, being the best friend that it is that we all love, decided that it wasn't actually streaming the whole thing live on Facebook. So that's fun. This is take 2. I'm Nick DiStefano. We're going to talk with my friend Alex Collins from MidWestern State University today. This is our second or third take on this, so this is going to be fantastic. It's going to be awesome, and we're going to have to eat our own medicine. And everything we talked about in terms of resilience, we are now practicing it because here we go again. So, Alex, tell the wonderful people who you are and how we know each other.
Yeah, so my name is Alex Collins. I'm the coordinator for student organizations and leadership programs here at MidWestern State University. MidWestern State is located in North by Northeast Texas. We are 2 hours away from Dallas and about 2.5 hours from Oklahoma City. Apparently there is other ways to get to Oklahoma City from Dallas. I learned about this recently. So people don't drive through here a lot. About me, I grew up in a small rural town in Ohio. Our high school was for like half of the county and it had more people than we had living in the town. I eventually went to community college that was bought out by the University of Cincinnati. So I have a associate's degree from the University of Cincinnati. I transferred to Northern Kentucky University. Go Norse. I went initially to do high school math to be an educator. Did a year of in-class tutoring, learned that was not for me. But I did finish out my degree in straight math. I then did 4 years of the Domestic Peace Corps working with higher education entities. So I did a year in Utah, a year in Ohio, and 2 years in Kentucky. And then I ended up going to grad school in a small town in Kansas called Hays at Fort Hays State University. It is the halfway point between Denver, Colorado, and Kansas City, Missouri. So about 5 hours in each direction of farmlands.
Love it.
And then knowing you, so I reached out to crowdsource speakers. So I get to bring 2 speakers a year in as my budget allows. To campus to do a leadership conference, one in the spring, one in the fall. And I reached out on like 6 different Facebook groups. And then I interviewed everyone who said they wanted to do it. And then I brought my like top 10 to students with all of their resources, and students picked Nick here to come in fall of 2019.
Love it. Super cool. That feels like yesterday. He's not kidding to y'all when he talks about MidWestern State kind of being like in the middle of, like Northwest Texas. I don't know what it is. Texas is all just one big blurb to me. But I flew into Dallas and then drove past like 1,000 cows and like 14 Whataburgers, and it was wonderful. So cool. So how are things going at MidWestern State University? What's happening out there right now? How are you doing? How are your students doing? What's going on?
Yeah, so MidWestern, we came back and we have stayed open all semester. We're running about 60% physical, 40% virtual. So we have almost all of our classes are hybrid in some form. So students will alternate what days they are physically in class, and then on Zoom. Overall, things are weird, as one can expect. My office is running about half staff. So our motto, our mantra for the semester is we're going to give you an experience. It started with extended orientation before the semester started, and it has continued on. We do not come back after Thanksgiving break, so that is going to be weird. We technically have another week of classes and then finals, but a lot of our students have told us that like they're doing their finals this week, so they will just have an extended break. Generally, things are going good. We are adapting to COVID, so we are still programming pretty heavily. My office oversees everything outside of like the classroom. Mine is like career management or counseling. So we're the programming board, fraternity, sorority life, student organizations. We partner with student government as advisors. Basically, we do a lot. Homecoming traditions, campus traditions. We're all over the place, and there are two of us. So we are doing our best, which is honest. We were telling students that like there's no way this is going to be last year. This isn't. We canceled homecoming. We can't do events with more than 100 people present without like the permission of the city. So like when we program, we're still doing stuff, but it's very intentional and it's very weird on how we are approaching a lot of stuff. Personally, I am surviving, which I'm pretty sure is like the base level. So we shut down after or during spring break. I forgot to tell this the first round. So I had bronchitis before campus shut down. So I thought I had like the first case of COVID in Wichita Falls, which was terrifying. I completely like repressed that memory until right now. So I was out for bronchitis, and then the campus shut down, and then we were working completely remotely until mid-June, early July. Last year I had part-time roommates, so they both were professors and they have lives outside of Wichita Falls, so they're not up here unless they are teaching. And since campus closed, I lived alone for 4.5 months, so that was terrifying. And then we came back mid to late July, or mid-June, early July, something like that. And we have been working in office ever since. It's been a lot. As a person who struggles with depression, anxiety, and ADHD, this has been exciting, I think is not the right word, but it is definitely a word. It has been challenging, to say the least.
I appreciate that you said it's been exciting. My guest last week, Harry, said, 2020 has been fun. And you say exciting the same way he says fun. And it's like, but in the reality, it's like, it's somewhat intentional. It's like, you find it like, even though like you're surviving, even though you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm just barely getting by, you still say it's exciting because you're trying to find that like positive in it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, how can I use this? So I think it's cool when people say that sarcastically, like 2020 has been fun, because really, like when you look back on it, like you did survive. But I love too that you share, we're just going to give you an experience. I'm not telling you, like you set expectations from the beginning. And I think that's important in terms of resilience. Right now I feel like I'm just giving people an experience on Facebook because this is take two. And, we're doing the best we can. Sometimes things don't work out, but we're still going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So what's worked well for you guys this semester? What's maybe not gone so well? What are some things you've learned in 2020?
Yeah, so for us, it's been hard because a lot of our programming is usually very student-based or built by students. So our programming board is down in numbers because it's COVID. Not everyone wants to come physically to meetings. Not everyone feels comfortable. There are more priorities than coming to student organization meetings. Like it's been a bit of a struggle. Overall, I think we've been doing pretty good. Sorority, Panhellenic sorority recruitment happened completely virtually this year. Our recruitment happened the week that National Panhellenic informed us that everything will be virtual. So we had planned that most nights were going to be virtual anyway. So luckily that didn't take us by too much of a surprise. We had 46 women go through the process. Our fraternities, I think, have really leaned into like informal recruitment. I want to say across our 4 IFC chapters, we had maybe 40 guys join this semester. And our average chapter size for IFC is 20s, maybe high teens, low 20s, something like that. So like students are trying to figure out how this works. I know some of our cultural-based organizations, they even took a line or two this semester. I think 2 of our organizations were able to do that this semester. And then we're working on like an informational for next semester, what that is going to look like for them, and how do we share the good news of being a part of a cultural organization at a predominantly white institution with 54% first-generation college students. So it's been good. Overall, it's been interesting. We've had to shift how we do things. So I have the wonderful opportunity of running leadership programming. It's something I'm very passionate about. It started in undergrad. I literally still have my plaque from the leadership organization I was a part of in my office. So we dropped one of my major programs this semester. We didn't know how to make it good and hybrid. And we decided that I would rather not put up half crap than an actual good program. So we pushed it back to next semester. I'm working with a grad student on how do we do maybe 1 hour a week meetings, and then there's digital components. I love Flipgrid. So how do we incorporate that? I already know how we're going to do it for like introductions, and then we're going to post on the internet. And because students go through these programs like, I want to learn how to talk in public, and then they don't want to talk in public, so I make them do it. I was like, because if I don't tell them beforehand, they will all suddenly not have Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. They just don't have social media.
Oh, I don't have it. Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I was like, I can find you on at least one of those platforms. So thank you.
Go find them on Parler.
Right. We'll find a spot. You'll post this, your 1 minute introduction on the internet and let people talk about it. So like, that'll be something that'll be easy to translate. But like, how do you have those hard conversations around diversity and inclusion? What does a privilege walk look like virtually? How do you build community through Zoom? Because we use like a family groups model. So like 6 or 7 students get attached to a family leader, and like they build a smaller community within the bigger program. So we are really basically just starting over. Like the content's there, but delivery has to be completely different. And then one thing that I love and / hate, so we do those leadership conferences once a semester, one I brought Nick in for. We had 14 people show up this semester. Nick, when you were here, I think we had like 158 or something, and that was like lower on the number scale. It was probably closer to 200 students showed up. So how do we go forward? So like, realistically, I cannot and I should not compare it to last year. Different circumstances altogether. I did have one student who showed up all 3 nights of the program. So I was like, at least one person came to all 6 sessions. So that was great. We had, I think on Thursday, one of our Panhellenic sororities, their entire executive board came for that night. So like the students who wanted to come found the topics that they wanted to, and they really got into it, which is great. But it is definitely harder to get people places when you can't give them chicken tenders. Chicken tenders and mashed potatoes. If you want students at your event, that's the easiest way of doing it. They will eat it. They won't touch green beans. They're there for carbs and carbs only. But one thing I've learned is like, I can no longer just do physical leadership programs, like in person only, because it's not fair to our students who don't live on campus or our distance learners. So like, maybe not the keynote, depending on our contract with said keynote individual, but like everything else is going to be Zoom or Facebook Live or something. so that our distance learners, our off-campus learners can, one, watch the information in real time if they choose to, but also it becomes asynchronous. They can watch it when it's convenient because it's saved somewhere, and they can pop in. I require that all of my presenters have their contact information, so if they need to like follow up with questions or anything like that, like it's on the presentation. They can ask their questions at a different time. It may not be like the perfect time for the presenter, but like students are not going to email you between 6 and 7 if that's when you're presenting. They're going to email you at 4 a.m. when they are done working a shift at Whataburger or whatever. When they have time, they're going to do it. I love walking in and just like, you have 6 emails from the hours of like 2 to 4 a.m. And I was like, students should be sleeping. Why are you awake? What is happening?
I love it. One of the things I'm going to ask you about real quick, because we talked about it in our first session, as you've made all these adjustments, what has helped you? Like, what are some of the resources, some of the things that you've relied on to get through? Because obviously it's been difficult. Like it's like I said in my post in the Student Affairs Professionals group the other day, right? 2020 has been easy. #said no student ever. And right. I mean, it hasn't been easy. It's been difficult. We know that, but what are you doing to get through it? Obviously, you've adapted, you've adjusted, you're trying to be creative, but are there any resources or things that you're using to help?
Yeah. So for me, I have started calling people again, which is horrible. I hate it. I don't like phone calls, mainly because I think 90% of most phone calls pre-COVID were text messages spread over 15 minutes. But I make phone calls again. I hang out I'm on Discord, and I hang out my Discord servers almost on a nightly basis. It's a way of just communicating with people. I don't like Zoom or FaceTime because like it's what I do for work. I don't like to look at myself if I have to talk to someone. I'd rather just not. But a big thing for me is I'm sharing resources. So every time I find something new, I'll throw it into all my Discords. I'll send it to students. I have become the master of just like throwing random events on our student organization platform, Mustangs link. Like I will literally get an email and I was like, oh, this is cool. Students will like this. Bam. And it's why do we have 36 events hosted by, I don't know, I think in the spring semester, it was like Fired Up did a whole series. And so it's just like, okay, we're going to put these on there. If students want to do it, it's awesome. If not, it's still on there. I tagged a bunch of our students in a Delta Gamma thing the other night because they were talking about contextualization of fraternity and sorority life through racism and this lens of how we've adapted from the 1800s to now. So sharing those resources is a big one. I think another one is also shifting your question. So I think as student affairs, we love the question, how can I help you? Or what do you need from me? And that is a very broad statement. So it's shifting it from basically putting all of the effort on the student or whoever you're talking to, okay, so these are my resources. This is what I can provide. What from this list do you want me to help you with? And if it's not on this list, I will find someone who can add to that thing. Because it really shifts a lot of that weight off of the students. I was going through, James Revellato is also doing a lunchtime series. And last week we talked about COVID. Everyone is experiencing the 5 stages of grief in some way, shape, or form throughout this entire program through the entire COVID, the pandemic. My brain.
Well, so it feels like the worst program ever of all time.
It's consistent. We've been doing it for 8 months. I'm sure we're hitting some sort of goal.
What were the learning
Everyone's
outcomes
participating. Yeah.
Sorry.
But yeah, so how do we, being more trauma informed on that piece is like, okay, so everyone's somewhere in grief, and it'll change day by day depending on personal experiences or what's happening in the community or what's happening on campus. So really making sure that we're able to provide very specific resources or options instead of being very nebulous, I think has been super helpful.
Love that. That sets expectations too. You know, it's like, this is the reality, and it also allows you to take care of yourself, rather than putting all of this pressure on yourself as a student affairs professional to solve everything for our students. I think that's key. One thing I know you do a really good job of too, so I'm just going to highlight it for everyone, is you're also really good at crowdsourcing everything. I mean, that's how we met. I know Alex will he puts 1,000 questions out there. And I think when we're talking about resilience and like overcoming adversity and pain and grief and all of these negative emotions and feelings that 2020 has basically just, lit on fire with, gasoline, right? Like those things were there before 2020, and 2020 was like, here's some lighter fluid. I think it's important that we ask for that help. And I know you're really good at that. So I'll give you a shout out to that because I know you talked about that before as well. And then last thing I'll ask you before I ask you just for final tips is, and this is not something I've asked other people, so typically these conversations are the same, but Alex put out there earlier in the week when I tagged him in this, like, this is happening, as I've done every week, he was like, oh my God, I'm nervous, I'm not ready. So do you think nervousness plays into resilience? And if so, how? Talk to me a little bit about it. Why were you nervous? What causes that?
So yeah, one of my mantras since undergrad, I don't know where I picked it up or who told it to me, but nervousness means you're willing to lose something. And for me, that's been a huge thing. So like fraternity and sorority life, when I was an undergrad, I was nervous about running for office or going through initiation or jumping into Order of Omega, taking on, one of my highlights is like I have created a philanthropy event that still happens with my chapter. And it started off as, I did too much in my first year. I decided to do a week-long philanthropy where every night we had at least one event. And I was like, there's 40 of us, we can do this. And it was just me running around like a crazy person. But it still exists. So something's good that came from that. But about that nervousness piece, like I'm nervous about a lot of stuff. And I think one, it has a lot to do with depression and anxiety. But two, like life is hard and I never feel prepared. I do a semesterly leadership program and I will warn students that like, we may be here for 4 hours because I'll go on tangents. I'm like, you don't have a plan? It's like, no, I have an outline. If I give you the outline, this will be done in like 30 minutes. So I'm just going to keep the outline. And we'll talk about random things, or I don't feel prepared. So I'll pull in some random information. I'll ask questions. Nervousness is a huge thing for me. Since learning the term imposter syndrome, I'm pretty sure I am the human version of that. But for me, it's all about like also pushing yourself out there. So if you're willing to lose something, you're putting something on the line. So for this program, and anytime I do anything on social media, I'm a very authentic leader. I believe that like, if I'm having a bad day, I'm not gonna like juice it up on Twitter. Like I'm gonna tell people that like, today's not a good day. This morning, I took a big old chunk out of my neck while preparing for this. And like my first 2 tweets of the day, I was like, well, I chunked my neck and then I had a giant Band-Aid. It was like this big. It's the only size Band-Aid I own and it covered like half of my face. I was like, so this is how the day's starting. We're gonna do it. We're gonna survive. I have an interview with Nick in a couple hours. And this is what's gonna look like. So for me, that nervousness piece is more about really putting yourself out there and being willing to fail and to lose, because like life isn't always winning and sunshine and rainbows, and 2020 has really amplified that. But you can do your best, you can ask for help, and you can fail gracefully. I think that's the biggest takeaway for, especially when it comes to resiliency, is like you don't know what's going to happen. Every couple weeks is like, is this the week we close? Is this the week we go completely virtual? How do I do all of my programs if there are not students on campus?
Yeah.
How do I do finals frenzy when finals are going to be online? Like,
it's the realness and the authenticity in that entire answer is what I think so many students struggle with. They're afraid of that. I think even for us as student affairs professionals and anyone else who is watching this, that's the struggle for everybody, that desire to put yourself out there to say, this is what I've got going on. But that's where resilience really truly lives, is in that awareness, within ourselves of, I'm uncomfortable, this is
Mhm.
awkward, I nicked my neck, I fill in the blank with whatever like awful thing you're feeling. Like, let's just start owning that. And
Mhm.
when we do that, I think that leads to resilience. You can't experience resilience until you've gone through something. Um, I like that you said you're never prepared. I would challenge though and say I don't think you're always ready. I think if you're coming in with an outline and you're coming in with stuff, you are prepared. You might not be as prepared as you want to be, right? And maybe that's
Mhm.
imposter syndrome. Maybe it's just your high standard of what you wanted to deliver to students. I think that's something that's important too when we talk about resilience, is how do we adjust our standards and our expectations? You all are doing that, even with, we're just going to give you an experience. I'm not telling you
Mhm.
it's going to be perfect, but we're going to do our best.
Yeah.
That's a key piece of it. Cool. Any other tips you'd offer to higher education professionals, to students, to anyone who's watching this when it comes to resilience, as we do this on take 2 or whatever number?
Yeah. So what has helped me a bunch this semester, and I don't know if I read it somewhere or if someone told me this, but like the best way to like take care of yourself is to help others. So for me, I don't know how much you believe in astrology. I'm like 60% water sign, so I'm all about the feelings and the communication. So I need to talk about things.
Yeah.
So my major role in a lot of things is just checking in with people. How are you doing? I'm reconnecting with people who like I haven't talked to in a couple of years, and I was like, okay, so I know things are hard. I'm not physically where all of you are located. I need to check in on see how people are doing. Um, and one, it starts a conversation. One, I'm going to say one a bunch. Um,
You're good.
uh, I can deflect from my own issues during that conversation because it's not about me. I can kind of take a step back from what I'm dealing with, but also like it really reinforces that relationship because like we're all struggling. No one's having a fun time this year, um, and if you can kind of re-cement those relationships that were really good, or even just like having those conversations with people who actually care about you, like the conversation is going to come back on you, on like how are you doing, how are you surviving, what are you doing, hey, we need to hang out, maybe we play video games online, whatever that is. Like you're really fighting that isolation that has come from the pandemic. Some of us are lucky and have people in our lives that we live with and stuff like that. We're like, but you're still contained with these 3, 4 individuals. How do you break out of that without breaking quarantine? And just getting very creative with that. And then that ties into what you were talking about earlier when I crowdsource a lot. Northern Kentucky is a magical place. I learned this the more that I work at other institutions, because like we have a Facebook group and a group me of like 30 to 40 people who went into higher ed after going to NKU. So like I will, like my current thing is like I hyperfixate with my ADHD. So I want to make a master list of all fraternity and sorority life organizations with all their fun facts. I was like, hey, is this a crazy person thing or is this like something that the profession could actually use? And everyone's just like, what? And I was like, I mean, you just copy the values and the colors and the flowers and their creed all into this giant Excel sheet. And everyone's like, that's weird. And I was like, okay, probably just for me then. I don't need probably all 300 plus organizations in an Excel sheet. But like, I think it's important.
Brings you joy.
Uh, I made it's part of our new member institute for our fraternity and sorority life members. Like, okay, these are the basics of these other organizations on campus. Tell me what you know about them. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, you are not an island. You're in a council, you're in a community. And I talk about this was part of my new member education. Like I had to know this about other organizations when I joined SIGEP. So like it's weird to me that like, yeah, I don't know. And I was like, I can tell you about Phi Sigma Sigma and how they were founded in New York because they were mostly Jewish women who weren't allowed in other sororities. And everyone's like, why do you know this? And I was like, I don't know. I picked it up because I cared about that organization. I cared about its members. When I talk about one of my best memories of college, like I think of our annual luau with Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. Like I don't know how it started, but every spring we would bring food, we'd play volleyball, we'd cook out, and like that was the entire event.
I love it. It's super cool. Uh, you know, what you started that answer with in terms of serving others and kind of giving and checking in, and this, you're the sixth person we've done this with now. I think that's come up in 4 or 5 of the
Yeah.
interviews. And I think people need to recognize that resilience and service go hand in hand. Like when we are, and this, I mean, this goes all the way back to people like the ancient Stoics, philosophers, like when they were having a tough time, the idea that we check in on others, that we take care of others, it gives you purpose too. Like there's, especially for us as higher education professionals, right? That idea that we're here to serve and to help and to assist, that brings me joy. I know it brings people like you and so many of it. Like it's something anyone can do when things are going poorly for yourself. It seems so like counterintuitive. Like, why would I help someone else if I'm struggling? Because it then gives you purpose and makes you realize too, like, okay, I do have value. Like, even though this is so crappy right now and this is so awful and I feel like total shit, like, let's just be honest, nothing is going right. Wait, I can still do this good thing. Holy smokes, like, I have value in the world. Like, that's an amazing feeling. And anyone can do it. Like, everyone can serve. And anyone can be resilient if you can serve. So I love that you highlighted that. And I know you're doing a fantastic job of that for your students and for other professionals, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate you doing this with me twice now. We have taken an hour worth of your time today because I'm a dumbass and I didn't record this, which I've learned I'm going to record it next time so I can just post it and not have to make someone take it twice when Facebook decides it doesn't want to work for me. So thank you, Alex. I appreciate you. To anyone who watched this live or who goes back and watches it afterwards, I hope you decide to be resilient today and never stop chasing the awesome life. Thanks, everybody. Have an awesome day.